NFL Inside Blitz Super Bowl Week 1 edition. I'm here with Ron from Ron A Sports and Ted Sobel from Ted Sobel Sports, and we're touching greatness because he touches greatness. How you doing, Ted?
I'm good, but I won't be touching too much greatness as far as the usual Pebble Beach weekend. There's no Aaron Rodgers, no Josh Allen this year, so I'm gonna have to live without those boys, but it's gonna be fun. Super Bowl 59, guys. Let's talk a little bit how they got there, but I got to ask Ron before we get into all of that. College All-Star games tonight. The importance of the East West, whatever they call it. What do they call? No, the Senior Bowl. That's what. That's always comes up with surprises and gets people just jogging their minds. Like, what am I going to do regarding the draft now?
Well, I think three old farts like us qualify for the Senior Bowl, don't we?
That's the extremely Senior Bowl for us.
Most of the buzz, there's a lot of scouts that actually leave when the game starts because they're charting all the one-on-one drills, the measurements, everything. They're getting early diagnosis on all that. And some of that is good and some of that is a waste of time because it's still not game competition against the ideal situations. The actual game flow, I'm just interested again in real highs, extreme highs or extreme lows. Did a quarterback go 1 out of 7? Did a quarterback go 10 out of 10? Did a running back, go 9 yards a carry or 0.5 yards a carry? The rest of the stuff is a little bit noise because they've only been a few days with each other and they can't even acclimate to what the schemes are. So I don't get a lot out of it personally.
Okay.
Have you ever bet a Senior Bowl?
I bet all.
Anything over 3, baby.
That's right. 3 or more is an automatic bet for any of these all-star games because
doesn't matter
you
who's
in approximately 62% of the time, and you'll win straight up. Maybe 53% of the time you'll win or push 62% of the time at 3 or more. It's throughout history. That's the way it's gone.
I'm going to be discussing some NFL betting thoughts once we get through a few things here.
Okay.
People have had time to latch on to the show. So I will get back to your question, Jacob, on alternate lines because I do have some discussion on that. So.
I love that. And again, before we actually go over what happened this past weekend on a brief note, just wondering about culture changes. I think that's the difference in getting a really important change in the head coaching position and not. And I think that's what the Raiders have done more than anybody. Your thoughts, guys? And I guess you could throw Vrabel in there as well, but I didn't think the culture was that bad because they already had their Patriots guy before him.
When I think of culture change, I'm thinking about the leftovers in my refrigerator, frankly.
that's I think I have the same refrigerator.
Yeah, it does seem like the Raiders are doing, you know what? They're doing the best under the circumstances that they can.
Exactly.
I think they're pivoting, quickly as well as they can. It wasn't a cushy job from the go. They missed who they wanted from the go, and you just have to kind of rock the boat a little bit. And I think they're rocking it in the right direction. I think Carroll getting in there, can change the culture right away, and that's what's needed.
Yeah, young, promising GM and an old, hopefully still promising head coach.
Yeah, but sometimes you need that bridge so that the organization gets on the right track before Carroll might not be there when it's time for them to actually make noise in the playoffs, but he could be the bridge because that roster is most likely bottom 3 right now. They don't have a quarterback. They have fringe wide receivers. Their offensive line's a mess. Their drafting has been bottom 5 cumulative the last 5 years, and one of the years it was worst in the NFL. So you don't get better that way. So this is a nice bridge for them.
Yep. They need a quarterback. They need some playmakers. They need a lot of things, but you got to start at the top. So all the way at the top, that's a whole different story. I wish them well in that department. But one great stat going into this next week's Super Bowl, every team in the playoffs until last weekend won the turnover battle and got the W. Okay, I mean that's standard. Almost doesn't matter what year, what league, whatever. But one team didn't. Do you guys know that team?
Buffalo?
No.
No. Well, then it had to be Philadelphia.
No. I didn't want to make a quiz out of this, but it's Kansas City. And it was one turnover in that game.
Yeah, well, that's what I meant.
Kansas City versus
Buffalo didn't win, though. Buffalo won the turnover battle, but they lost the game.
Yeah.
Right. And so it stresses the point how we've been saying, and it gets louder every week. And up into this week, it's extremely loud. The greatest find-a-way team ever, the Kansas City Chiefs. They're unbelievable. Whatever it takes to win. And we're going to get into the sound on that just a little bit. But Andy Reid's going into this game. I don't think we've ever had a coach that is the winningest coach in the history of both teams in the Super Bowl. But that's the case here with the Eagles and the Chiefs.
That is an amusing stat. Andy Reid's the lifetime wins leader on both teams.
That is weird. That's strange.
I think one comment one thing I've noticed with Kansas City, especially with Kelsey's comments yesterday, or was it this morning? I'm not sure, but Kansas City seems to be embracing, kind of segueing into the bad guy role pretty well. It seems pretty seamless, just like their play in the field. Frankly, I don't think it's disrupting them or bothering them at all.
One funny thing that I found, and I think I did the same thing last year on this show at the same week. I'm watching the Australian Open, and the runner-up is praising the hell out of the guy who beat him for the Ultimate Championship, the men's championship there in Melbourne. And this year, last weekend, Sunday, it was Sasha Zverev. He lost to Jannik Sinner, the number one tennis player in the world. And as he spoke, he looked exactly as if he could have been Josh Allen talking about Patrick Mahomes. And folks, you got to see that. Let's hear from Sasha Zverev. And don't tell me you can't hear Josh Allen in his voice while he's talking.
First of all, I mean, it sucks standing here next to this thing and not being able to touch it, I'll be honest. No, but first of all, congratulations to Jannik. You more than deserve it. You're the best player in the world by far. Yeah, I mean, I was hoping that I could be more of a competitor today, but you're just too good. It's as simple as that. So congratulations to you. You really deserve it. Congrats to your team as well. You've done all the right things. You've done all the work. And, there's nobody that deserves this trophy more.
One more good comment coming up. Oh, keep it going. One more good comment.
Then I want to thank my team. I mean, we're trying to do all the right work. I'm just not good enough. It's as simple as that.
That's it. Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes. I want you to shake hands when the game is over. Thoughts on that, boys?
It did fit for both.
Exactly.
I mean,
all right,
Josh Allen doesn't play defense for Buffalo, and Buffalo, even though that home crowd for those first couple of games really got them going, the bottom line is that would have been the worst statistically driven defense that it would have ever made the Super Bowl, and it would have caused me some grief in terms of how to evaluate them actually getting to that point. And I didn't want to get to that point and then think, oh my goodness, all this work, even though if it's one game or 3 games, that I have to reevaluate things. And basically, what Josh Allen's saying is obviously true. The team as a whole, there's just a way that Kansas City finds to win. But the other thing is Kansas City out-schemed them in that game. I mean, on offense, they out-schemed them because the middle, when Juju Smith-Schuster catches 2 passes for more than 10 yards, you've discovered something. And it was 2 passes for 60 yards. The middle was open on those slant routes. They discovered something, and they knew the Bills were deficient defensively. And then, as we saw with Spagnuolo, what he did to use same formation, but then blitz from that formation on that crucial 4th and 5 at the end of the game, that in-game adjustment by Kansas City, just little things were the difference in that game because the teams just happened to match up pretty 50-50.
Yeah. Well, everything you say is 1,000% correct. But I want to add one thing. And as much as I love Josh Allen as a player and as a guy, he's a really quality guy. Bottom line here, the last 2 times he faced Kansas City in the playoffs, forget the defenses on the Buffalo side, he had the ball with under 3 minutes left, and he didn't get any points either way. So that has nothing to do with the Buffalo D. That's the truth. That's a fact. But the Buffalo defense, we talked about them since that Ram game when they gave up, 50 points or something. And they say this team is just they're not worthy.
I'm still trying to figure out how they made it as far as they did with that defense. Yeah. It really it's really a mind blower. Their offense was darn tootin' good and just seemed to be improving, and I'll give them credit on that. And I actually was, my model had Buffalo solidly as the pick, so that was wrong. So there was rhyme and reason to be on Buffalo, even with that horrible defense, which kind of says something a little bit about Kansas City, frankly.
It does, and it also says a lot about Josh Allen, though, too, because he's the difference maker. He makes a lot of stuff happen when that team is not up to standard in many other ways. So, anyway, bottom line is they're not good enough.
We finally reached the point where I can start to feel sorry for the guy.
Is Buffalo ever going to win a Super Bowl?
Well, it's only one team gets to hold the trophy, at the end of each year. And if that one team is always a Kansas City or something like that, then it's a little harder for the other 31.
I was really rooting for Buffalo in the one reason was Marv Levy is 99 years old, and he would love to see that team win a Super Bowl. And he has never won the Super. He was in the game once with Washington under George Allen as a I think he was a special teams coach, and they lost. So it would have been nice to see one for him while he's still around. But whatever. Speaking of old timers, Lamar Hunt is the guy who called it the Super Bowl originally, and his son, who is laughing in cash every day for the rest of his life, the CEO Clark Hunt, he spoke about the reason this team is going for a three-peat and no one else has ever done it.
Think back to 2013 when Andy joined the organization, made us an immediate winner, really changed the culture here. Okay. And then a few years later, he got the quarterback that he'd been waiting his whole career for. I think there was a comment earlier about why it's so hard, why nobody's ever gone back to have a chance at a three-peat. I think it's because those teams didn't have the combination of Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes.
All right, well, that's pretty straightforward, isn't it? Why don't we hear from Mahomes, the only quarterback to start in 5 Super Bowls before the age of 30 after he beat the Bills?
Oh, what do you think I am, an octopus here? Here we go.
You're amazing.
Patrick, any sense coming into this game you would run for more yards and more touchdowns than Josh Allen this?
I didn't know that. Not necessarily. They always give me options to kind of pull the ball and run it, and they were playing man coverage a lot of the day, and they were putting a lot of attention on Travis. And so with them kind of pushing that safety and pushing extra linebackers to Travis, it opened up different lanes for me to run, and I was able to run the football. And I pulled some of those reads that I've had all season long just because it's playoffs, and you have to make sure that the defense is true to what their rules are.
Whose idea is it to have you roll out with Travis as the lead blocker, how much have y'all been working on that play, given you ran it from the 10, it's not like you ran it from the 5?
Yeah, no, it's actually the same run that Kareem scored on, and I handed it off on that one, and then based off how the DN played, I knew that he was going to try to get in there and not let him score again, and he went down, and I pulled it and went out, and Noah had a great block, and then Xavier, I think, was out there on the edge, and then Travis with the big block to get me into the end zone, and so it's about reading the defense, going out there and making plays, and it's always great when you have guys that are going to lay their body on the line in front of you to get you into the end zone.
Patrick, obviously the real goal is still ahead, but can you just describe the feeling of getting to that after all this, and maybe what's going through your head as you're running around the field celebrating right when it ended?
It's just so hard to get to the Super Bowl, and I don't take it for granted. And to be able to do it again at Arrowhead was special. I mean, last year it was awesome. You get there and you win it, but you're at a different stadium, and then being able to win it at Arrowhead, and then you get that trophy on that stage, and you look around, and there's not a seat empty. It is a special place, and I'm glad that I get to be a part of Chiefs Kingdom and here in Kansas City, because these moments that I'll have for the rest of my life.
What did you say it took to get here? I mean, to get to this point?
Yeah, it's a long process, and it takes everybody. It takes every single person on the team, and you saw that tonight. If it was special teams, if it was offense, if it was defense, everybody had their role in this game. And that was a great football team that we played. And so for us to go through the season and win the games the way that we won them, I'm proud of the team. But like you said, we're not to the ultimate goal yet, and this will be a great challenge for us with Philadelphia. And so I'm excited for the guys preparing and get to New Orleans and put up our best shot.
I know you're trying to win every year, but in this moment, a chance to get the 3. Does this one feel a little bigger, maybe, in this moment?
I mean, not necessarily. I put every single season as its own season, and every team's different. You get new guys, you get guys that have to step up in different roles, and so I just go about my business and just try to prepare everybody to be in the best possible situations to succeed. And obviously, it'll be awesome. I think it'll be something I look back at the end of my career if we're able to go out there and get that three-peat. But at the same time, you just treat it as one season and one Super Bowl run, which is always hard to do.
All right, so that's Patrick Mahomes, obviously, and I hope Patrick Riley is not watching, because we've said three-peat 50 times, and I think he gets paid like every time somebody mentions it. So still,
it's important, because I keep on hearing, from the other players also, and actually analysts, and what's really important is how on all these teams, like, they don't have the star-studded cast that some of the other teams have, or even Philadelphia has, and they do it with basic WD-40 and duct tape. And what the common theme is, and Ron, you can talk about it, the prop of how many people he's going to throw the ball to, I believe, is 8. So, I mean, that's an obscene amount of people that might get a pass. And every single person on that team, they aren't just fill-ins. They all have assignments. They're all involved in the game. They all have goals and directives, and they're all working congruent with each other. And it's just evident in what they say and how they do it. And I don't know. I'm not as familiar with props, but 8 people seems like a lot of people to get the ball to.
It is.
Yeah, typically you'll see a 6.5 or 7.5. Right. I don't think I've ever seen an 8. And it might be low for them, because they're just going to ride. I mean, Smith-Schuster could go 2 or 3 games without catching a pass or being targeted once, and then all of a sudden he's reliable. If I had to say the biggest difference, now that we've had 20 games or 19 games under our belt, the biggest difference from KC this year to last year is that they've added guys who they know will not drop the ball. They had problems with drops. We've talked about that for the last couple of years. But with Hopkins, with Smith-Schuster, and with Brown, Hollywood Brown now involved and so on, these are established guys that Mahomes is really going to trust. Even Kelsey's the one who had a drop the other day. And, that's rare. So it's going to be rare to see them drop the ball. And it just makes their offensive game planning maybe a little more confident that he could trust these reliable veterans.
Yeah, one of the things I liked about what Mahomes said was the fact that he talked about Kelsey and how he was being defended. He only had 2 catches in that game, yet they still win and go to the Super Bowl. And that says a lot. What was the OU on that one?
Roughly 6.5, but the play I had
high.
was, well, I mean, it's going to be that again, but actually I didn't have that play. The play I had was under 71.5 yards because of the way I thought was going to go.
Right.
And that really never moved, and that was across everybody's board.
Can Ron or Ted, do either of you think that there's any chance that Reed has something up his sleeve to retool the offensive line, because their running game has been really poor, and that's due to having to shift linemen around, and is there potential for switching back?
It's a really good concept, because that's pretty important, because my preliminary analysis says that Philly's really got an advantage in the run game, not only with Barkley, but the way they defend the run. Washington was supposed to, because they played them twice in a row, challenge the run because they weren't afraid of it, because they understood the game planning. They played them twice a year and so on. And yet in their first drive, if you remember, a very nice Washington time-consuming drive, they passed on every down but one. So even they weren't going to test it, and they couldn't go back and flip the switch to get back to the run. And while Hunt's running above my expectation, and he's really had a good year. He's kept Pacheco on the bench. Pacheco is maybe not 100% healthy, whatever the case may be, because the last time Pacheco played him, he gained 5-6 yards to carry. But this Philadelphia team is going to be tough to run against. So my first answer to the question is, I don't think Kansas City will have success in the traditional way, but we know Worthy gets the ball once or twice. We might see another wide receiver get the ball that we haven't seen in the past. And we might see Mahomes on second down instead of third down run the ball. They're going to have to create ways to get the run game going.
I could see a couple of end around type plays in this thing. I just know that everybody's going to be talking about it's Reed versus Sirianni. In my mind, and that's important, of course, but in my mind, more important, Spags versus Vic Fangio. Who's going to win that battle?
Well, offhand, in-game adjustments would favor KC. But the other thing is Philly is upgraded in a lot of areas on defense.
Number one team.
They rotate the defensive line continuously. They've obviously plugged some holes with draft choices, with Slay there, with Gardner Johnson, with Blankenship, I think it is there. So they have the kind of unit they haven't had from top to bottom defensively in a long time. And one thing about Mahomes I should mention is in his last two games against Philly, everybody thinks the Super Bowl was the last game that they played. That wasn't true. In 2023, end of the season, Philly extracted revenge, down 10. They won 21-17. In both games, Patrick Mahomes, his completions were less than 10 yards per completion. So Philadelphia has to try to do that again, even though there's more veterans in the wide receiver lineup for Kansas City. But I don't expect Mahomes to go wild in terms of yards per completion.
Okay. Well, Vic Fangio is 0-9 versus Pat Mahomes. But
I saw that.
But I don't remember the exact stat. His defense has had two of the best performances in one of the, whatever the key metric is in measuring the success rate of a quarterback. So it might not have gotten the win, but has performed at a pretty high, has gotten his defenses to perform at a high level on several occasions.
Yeah, I think that one of the misnomers there on that stat is the fact that I'm sure a bunch of those games were when he was with Denver as the head coach. And yeah. I mean, that wasn't a comparison. I mean, they're not going to beat them very much in those days. So
and Vic Fangio, we all learned Vic Fangio didn't accelerate or make the offense better. If you look at Denver, their defense was fine, but they couldn't score points.
Right.
And Vic Fangio is not tasked with them scoring points. I want to make one point about Sirianni, at least to defend him a little bit.
Oh, you're the one.
Remember in his first season, Cris and I talked about it a lot, where after those 4 or 5 games and everybody said, gee, this guy can't coach whatsoever. And he made that subtle adjustment and they ran the ball. Instead of running the ball 30% of the time, they ran the ball 70% of the time and things flipped. That happened again this year after the bye, that they reset the offense and stuff like that. So Sirianni doesn't always come across as the smartest guy in the room, but their adjustments have worked. I mean, he has seen it from a different standpoint. So he's not Andy Reid, but let's not knock him 5 notches down from, this team has gone to the Super Bowl 2 of the last 3 years and started last year 10-1 or something like that. So
right.
A lot of teams would love to have that kind of record.
Yep, no doubt.
Just addressing that previous pop-up that came up, a lot of people are very pro Kansas City. I already know Ron's answer. I asked him what he made the line, and you basically said pick them, but you're giving a point to just because of the playoff history and just things along those lines. But I can most assuredly tell you that let me ask you this first of all. Do you have your rankings, your team rankings handy, Ron?
No, I have to do it by heart, but I'll try to answer your question.
Do you think that you have Kansas City as a top 5 offense or defense?
No. I don't have them in top 5 offense or defense. I'm pretty sure.
Do you think you have either of them? Do you think you have Kansas City as a top 10 offense?
Interesting question.
I would have to look at that. I wish I had.
Great question.
I would think they would straddle close to 10, but I cannot give you the definitive answer on that particular one.
Well,
I'd probably say outside of the top 10, I'd probably say.
Right.
Defensively, probably inside.
Yeah, probably.
So that's how you get to why Kansas City would not be favored by more. Kansas City is certainly not a top 10 offense.
Against the number 1 defense.
And then you have their defense. I'm right along with you, Ron. They're straddling the bottom of the top 10. So with that combination, certainly Philadelphia has the number 1 defense, and they're certainly significantly higher. In fact, Philadelphia is closer to number 1 than Kansas City is to number 10 on my list.
So in that way, wouldn't value be you get any points in Philadelphia and you're getting value?
Let's step back a second, because the very thing that I preach at the beginning of the year, in the middle of the year, and maybe at the end of the year is, aren't we forgetting something?
Okay, what?
There's a third component besides offense and defense.
Special teams.
Special teams.
And Kansas City has the edge over Philly in that area. Is it as pronounced offensive and defensive? I just think we can't sit back and say Kansas City doesn't do right things, on special teams. They have slightly the better punter. They have the better kicker. I like Philadelphia's return game, but it's not explosive. Whereas, as we saw last year's Super Bowl, and from time to time, Kansas City has the potential to be more explosive in the return game. So we can't discount the fact that there is a third component to this game.
Well, I know, yeah. And when you're talking about that, just the head coaching, I mean, it's getting back to what you touched on earlier, Ted. It's with the three-peating issue. It really bothers me when you see the template out there for everybody to see, and that is keeping the band together.
Right. And
as a Detroit Lion fan, when you see 4 and 5 coaches scatter about, and the majority of them will fail, it just makes me shake my head, because you had the perfect setup, keep the band together, and do something really special, and you just have too much selfishness, amongst people in those positions. They don't want to stay. They want the notoriety, or they want the money. They want, they don't have the same objectives of Kansas City, which is just win.
Yeah, well, Kansas City's coaching staff has remained the same for the most part. You got Matt Nagy is back there again. I don't know how much say-so he has in the offense. I have no idea. I mean, he might just be, putting money in the back pocket of Andy Reid during games. I have no idea what he does. But I want to say there's a number 18, and that's how many guys are still on the roster from their Super Bowl win 3 years ago. And that's pretty significant.
That is.
We're not talking nobodies of those 18, right? There's some real key elements there that makes them a winning team. And a lot of teams, it's the next year they lose more than that, right? Because everybody scatters all over the place. You want a Super Bowl champ. So that's huge difference there.
Yeah, I got 2 points on that. One is the continuity also extends to the GM and the drafting room and so on. And when Kansas City lost that Super Bowl, the very next year, September, first game of the season, they started 5 different offensive linemen. And you never see that kind of turnover, much less from a team at the top. And it worked because they stole 2 offensive linemen. They got Creed Humphrey at the very back end, 61st pick of the second round, and he had a first round grade. They took another guy, Smith, in the 6th round, who had a 3rd or 2nd round grade, at least on my board and some others. And then they got one in free agency. They kept, they moved things around, and they instantly went right back to the Super Bowl. Good organizations can fix things in a hurry if they know what they're doing. The second point I would make has nothing to do with the Super Bowl, but it still astounds me that with how many different offensive coordinators every single year, that Baker Mayfield keeps getting better. And that beat me. And that was the one really beat that I had. And I don't have any regrets on it. I just think I should be given Baker Mayfield credit every day, the way he's survived all that.
Yeah, I've been hyping the hell out of him all year, basically. And by the way, what Jacob writes there, that the books made the Chiefs favorites for the reasons he said, and I basically agree with all of that. But that also doesn't take away from the fact that if Philadelphia is ranked way above Kansas City on offense and defense, if they're getting any points, that's value to me. And by the way, I don't like Philadelphia in the game. I'm just saying that's value to me. Thoughts, guys?
I will continue to do matchup analysis. I'm pretty sure I know which way I'm going to go, but I'll talk about it next week.
Okay. Let's hear from Travis Kelce before we move on from the Chiefs and go to the Eagles on his excitement after beating the Bills again.
I'll tell you what, man, there's nothing better than playing in front of Arrowhead for an AFC championship, man. They had that thing rocking, and more than ever. And we needed them more than ever, man. That Buffalo team was as good as we've ever played. And a lot of great competitors over there. I got a lot of respect for those guys, man. They made it hard.
Travis, it was almost a year ago that you guys called your shot, saying you wanted the three-peat. What does it mean to now actually get the shot?
It's a new feeling right now. But I'm just excited, man. I'm very I'm happy for the guys that are doing this for the first time, trying to make it everything for them. But I know there's bigger fish to fry, and that's the Philadelphia Eagles down there in New Orleans.
Travis, the resilience of this team, just coming through in the 4th down stops when the play was needed, you made it. What is about this resiliency that's been shown all year?
I love this defense, man. Just Spags, we trust, and we've always trusted him and everybody that plays under him. They're so sound, and they play their tails off, and they throw their heart out there on the field every single week, all the way until the end. And you saw that tonight.
There you go. So that's Travis Kelce, and they're all praising Spagnuolo, and they should, because he makes a huge difference. He's one of the best in our era for sure.
One of the players that's really emerged that you guys could talk about is Xavier Worthy. He actually came into the league from Texas with a reputation, as I scouted him for the draft, as somebody who didn't have the most reliable hands, but would be a great complement to Rashee Rice, who's long since gone and replaced by two others now, and so on. Instead, Worthy has developed into a very reliable receiver, making tough catches, being trusted with a lot of targets.
It's funny you mentioned that, Ron. I made a note for this show, and I'll read it to you. Using Worthy well, and from just being a gadget guy to a legit potential key receiver, it is totally turned around. And that's one of those 8 guys, at least, who's going to get a target and some key ones in this one.
Didn't think it would happen in a 1 year period of time, but it's clearly happened.
You know, just to address it, a lot of the comments are based on. I don't think the books have huge liability on Kansas City at all. I think the liability is probably somewhat equal if you took a cross section of all the books, because they didn't have to pay out. The odds on Kansas City were pretty darn low. We discussed that at the beginning of the year.
You're talking about which odds?
Futures.
I think we both picked Kansas City to make the Super Bowl, didn't we, Ron?
Oh, okay. I was lukewarm on. I mean, if I had to, I don't like making these predictions. If I had to, I had Philadelphia beating Detroit on the other side, because I thought Philadelphia had a much better chance to get the number 1 seed because of the division they played in, and because I thought Washington would be improved, but not this improved, and we all know how I felt about Dallas. So they had the easier division. The other, I think I would have erred toward Baltimore more than KC, even in the tough division. But
the odds on Kansas City the entire season have been pretty darn low, and people don't take. People want to go for the big shots. So Philadelphia was 11-1 and higher, maybe as high as 16-1. But so. It's not, if anything, I don't think there's a huge liability issue with where they put the line. And the Super Bowl, actually, opposed to the entire rest of the season, the books are going to not really control what happens. Not that they really do anyway, but they're not going to steer anybody any direction. The public money that comes in is so overwhelming that it literally dwarfs what sharp action can do.
Right, but the public money, how much of that is because it's Kansas City? Again, if this was the San Jose Chiefs, same roster, same everything, right? Would they be even favored in this game?
No, they wouldn't be favored. That's what people have to understand in this situation.
So there's value.
Is that this line has no business being where it is. Everybody that's saying the line is silly, yeah, you're right, but you're wrong. It should be the other way. Philadelphia should be favored.
Right.
And I believe, and I can be wrong because there may not be enough sharp money in the world to move it because it is the Super Bowl.
Right.
But every time you see a 2 pop up on that Kansas City, it gets slapped back down immediately. And
that's a comment I want to make because we're not dealing with straddling, like if you're talking about a difference between 6 or 6.5 and 7 and 7.5, or with 3 come into play, you've got these key numbers. So the big question is, what's a key number when the line is so short? Does it matter to most people that it's 1, 1.5, or 2? And I would argue that in a Super Bowl, and with aggressive teams like a Kansas City or Philadelphia, and we know we've only had 1 Super Bowl with 1, but the rules have changed. The extra points are further back. There's so many differences. You can't go on that stuff. I would argue 2 is a key number in this game.
No, I agree. And I was looking at it yesterday and noticed that there has been only 1 of the 58 Super Bowls that has landed on 1 or 2.
Oh, that's interesting.
Since 1990 that's happened.
Wow.
And, when you're talking about the land frequency of numbers, you can't necessarily base it on history. because I'll bet anybody that a Super Bowl lands on 1 or 2 here in the next few years, if not this year. With all these new fourth down conversions, where we have two teams facing each other that are going to go for it on fourth down in any sort of situation that isn't unreasonable. So that's a big difference from previous years. And it's just going to continue to be more aggressive like that as people become more accustomed to the analytics and see how it really does change the game. And you got to hold on to that ball or you got to score.
So do you strongly believe that this thing is never going to get to a solid even 2 for the rest of the time?
No, public money could change that. I mean, we don't know. Yeah. I mean, the chances of those people thinking, oh, the line opened 1 and then it went to 1.5 and 2 right away. Oh, is it going to keep going? The push point may be 2. It's definitely 2.5. If you see a 2.5, I would think it would come right back to 2. And the other side is true too. If there's enough sharp people who are going to sway it even a little bit, there are going to be some sharp books perhaps that may say we're more comfortable with a 1 or an even.
Right.
This isn't a college bowl game where once it moves, it goes and goes and goes and it never comes back.
This might go back and forth. We're not going to see really what's going on. I don't want to misquote, but I believe it's in the neighborhood of, it's over 50%, well over 50% of the money that's bet over this 2-week period will be within the final 24 hours. I mean, that's significant. I forget what the percentage generally was, but it's well over 50% comes in last minute. So, people want to wait for the news. They want to extrapolate from the press conferences, anything that they can possibly glean, because in this situation, you don't know what's going on with Andy Reid. I mean, he has demonstrated just on that final fourth down or that final third down against Buffalo, where he has that nice pass to what's his name, who's wide open. They always had these amazing trick plays. That's why I asked Ron earlier, do you think they might fiddle with the offensive line? They've got things up their sleeves, and Philadelphia will have things up their sleeves. So.
Yeah, but Andy Reid 2 weeks, I'll take him over Sirianni. Sirianni is over the season. Let's see what he does as far as adjustments go. That'll be interesting.
There was a question in the chat about the total, and we haven't talked about the total, which has been roughly 49.5, I believe, most of the time. But there's been a lot of talk about under. So we can take this in terms of game flow. We can take it in terms of perception. I mentioned last week before the Kansas City Buffalo game that there would be no sparring period. Those teams would come right after each other. And I bet accordingly because of that. The overs, the score in the first 7 minutes, all these different things and so on. So the question I have for you guys is, do you think there'll be sparring in this game?
Yeah, I do actually. And I think it sets up perfectly for that. But I think there's going to be little patches of consistency from offensive standpoint that I think I'm leaning over because of that. I think that there's going to be enough points in this game. It's going to take care of biz. We'll see if either side gets conservative. Let's face it, if Philadelphia's run game is slowed down a little bit and Barkley doesn't run 3 more 70-yard runs in one game, how are they going to get things going? Because Jalen Hurts' passing game has not been fantastic lately.
And he's last in the league when he's under pressure. I mean,
that's what I'm saying. So that better be a good combination working on both sides. He's got to have that run game open it up for him, because if he doesn't, and with that knee, he looked great in the last game, but he doesn't want to run if he doesn't have to.
No, he doesn't. I initially thought I really liked the under a lot initially, and I was pissed at myself for not taking the under 50. I did take the first half under. I like the under 24.5 in the first half. Super Bowls traditionally start off a little bit slower. I like the more points in the second half prop. This line is down to 48.5. in several places. And, you know, the word on the street is that this thing's going to get hit hard to the over at some point. So,
okay, interesting.
Kind of anticipating that. I love the under at first, but then also when you put things in perspective about Kansas City and their offense, they score when they have to score, you know, and I don't think Kansas City's defense is good enough to stop Philadelphia. I think Philadelphia is going to get their points, and I think Kansas City is going to have to score some points. So I think it's and obviously in games like this, there's always desperation to score. There's nobody that's ever going to be lazy offensively. So I kind of tempered my my under look, and maybe I will get on the over train at some point.
One thing that seems to be glossed over is the way Philadelphia stretches the field in the pass game. Does it always work? Not necessarily, but you can count on at least 2, if not more, deep throws to Brown, most likely, Smith with the underneath, because that's the way they operate. And Hurts actually was very sharp. You could tell right away. I always look for quarterbacks. Are they throwing high at the beginning of the game? Are they sailing things? And actually, not one of the 4 quarterbacks who played last week had a problem with getting right into rhythm, Daniels included. They all looked pretty sharp, including Hurts. And he hit the pass to Brown. He hit some other ones over the middle. So they're going to try to stretch the field. Is it going to work? That's what we're going to find out, whether or not they hit that big play, because most games are decided by 2 or 3 plays when it comes down to it. But if they hit one of those, it frees up Barkley later on.
Right. Let's hear from the Eagles, Cris, before we go too far afield here. I keep mentioning Kansas City's the greatest find-away team of all time for a long stretch of this several-year period. But what about the Eagles? And both Nick Sirianni, and Jalen Hurts say it is whatever it takes to win, and that's why they're here.
It's amazing how much doubt there is sometimes. I can't quite comprehend it because, you know, it doesn't look like people think it should look like. But the guy has been clutch. He's won a ton of football games. But you ran for this many yards. We don't care how we win. We don't care. If we rush for 300 and pass for 1 and we win, great. If we rush for 1 and pass for 300, great. Who cares? We've just continued to win. He's just continued to win, and I think the criticism is, yeah, whatever. He just wins. And I said what I said after the game, and that's kind of how I feel.
I don't play the game for stats. I don't play the game for numbers, any statistical approval from anyone else. And I understand that everyone has a preconceived notion on how they want it to look or how they expect it to look. And I told you guys that winning and success is defined by that particular individual, and it's all relative to the person. And what I define it as is winning. And so the number one goal is always to come out here and win.
I love that guy, Jalen Hurts, because
what a contrast to Cam Newton this morning when he said he would rather win the MVP trophy than the Super Bowl, huh?
That's why he's not in the league anymore. That's how stupid is that? Speaking of MVPs, my MVP is next up in Saquon Barkley on finally reaching the Super Bowl, baby.
When you signed for free agency, did you think this would be a possibility to go to the Super Bowl your first year as an Eagle?
Of course, that's why I came here. It's one of the first conversations I had with Howie. That's a conversation I had with my family. And like I said last week, I came to Philly to be a part of games like this. And nothing better than a game where you can advance to the Super Bowl. So super excited about that. And it was a team effort. And we'll give a shout out to all the guys on our team. And big shout out to Will Shipley. At the end of the game and on special team making a big play, we talking our running back room that, you know, no matter what, running the ball, pass blocking, special teams, we got to be the ones. And he epitomizes that today.
In those conversations months ago about this appearance to the Super Bowl, does it feel everything like you expected it would?
Yeah, I mean, you never know. You envision it. But the bad thing, you envision envision it so much and you dream about it so much that when it happens, it never quite reaches expectations. Kind of expected. So hopefully, when we get the job done, it might be a little better.
There you go. That's Saquon, and yes, I think he should be the MVP. That's simple.
Your turn, Chris.
By the way,
I know you want. Oh yeah.
Oh, real quick, the V in MVP stands for valuable, not best, not top, not anything else. Valuable. If they're going to use valuable as the reason you choose somebody, that's the. But otherwise, they give it to people. Value that means nothing. Value is going to mean something in our odds. Okay, guys.
Okay. I know, Chris, you had the topic that you wanted
please.
to go through, so walk us through it.
I wanted to. There was something else you just you took me offline. Anyway, but I did want to address the way that I had been betting NFL, and I'm following this model, and it was highly successful for years. And like a lot of people that are working off of metrics, I mean, there are some people that have had just abysmal years. I mean, I've heard of some very, very sharp professionals that are literally just like, at the bottom. And my model stopped performing as well as it had in the past. And I had to pivot because my belief is we sit there and we invest this money and we're doing all this work to decide who wins a game, and we're putting our money on the line. And if you look back and you go through every game of the season and you count up the number of games where the spread was decided by some ridiculous penalty, some ridiculous random turnover, just some sort of Plinko type result at the end, you'd be shocked at how many of these games come down to coin flip basic endings. And my belief is we work too hard and we're too smart to put our money in situations that are far too often random. The variance is atrocious. I mean, we're not talking about 1 or 2 games a week. We're talking 4, 5, 6, 7 games a week are going down to the wire.
Right.
And
substantially more than ever.
I believe I believe I've never seen it. I mean, I don't have a way of charting that. So I don't want to say for sure.
No, just
I've been doing this, a hell of a long time. And Ron, you're better qualified to answer this. I can't ever remember the end of game scenarios being so unknown and so decided at last minute.
It's cyclical. I have seen years like this, but each year is its own kind of thing. Almost each week is its own kind of thing. How many times do you go to the red zone and the morning you can't leave your seat because 6 of the games are last play is going to win. And then the next week, nothing. So I just call it as cyclical. And I guess I use the law of averages when I go ahead and look at results for a week or a year or whatever. You're going to have all these close games, but that's why nobody hits 83%, of the year and all this and that. And when everything is said and done, you just want to be in the 55 to 57, 58%, and anything above that is gravy and fantastic and so on. So you're going to lose toss-up games. Everybody's going to lose toss-up games. And if it seems like there's more toss-up games, there is that one every 3, 4, 5 years that creeps up where there's just so many of those games. And this was one of those years.
Yeah. As Thomas says, he basically, says the same thing. He subscribes to people and they had bad years. And, excuse isn't I don't like the word excuse. For me, I can only speak for myself because if I have people following me, I present it that way. This is what I'm betting. If you want to follow me, that's your choice. I don't make excuses for anything. I don't play the game. None of us do. We do the best we can with the data that's there, and what has traditionally worked. And I believe I've always had a little bit of an elevated metric model than most people, but any which way you looked at it, but when you look at the volume of games, it just came down to the last minute. That's blatantly easy to see. And the other thing that I'll say, getting back to you, Ron, I always looked at it this way, that it didn't matter what you did with the handicapping or anything you could possibly do. 50% of the games, you couldn't handicap. They don't match the box scores. There's no rhyme or reason for why the scores ended that way. So essentially what you're trying to do is you're trying to get a 60% win percentage on the remaining 50% that you can metrically handicap properly. Somewhere in that range, 60 to 65% on the remaining 50%. I know I've said that in the past. I don't remember whether you agreed or disagreed. What do you think about that comment?
I think both of us come in. I know when we brainstormed about college, but it's true for anything for the NFL. We brainstorm using, first of all, process of elimination. I'm not going to look at that game. It's this number of spread. There's too many variables. Let's take this out of the equation. You take 60 college games and you try to narrow it down to the ones that we think we could find an edge. And the same thing with the NFL. There may only be 15 games, but there's usually 3 or 4 I throw out right away because there could be high variance. And if you're going to attack high variance, there are other ways to do it than straight betting. And that's the alternative, that's the alternate lines and so on. But if you're a straight better like me, you don't necessarily want high variance. I mean, you want something where you feel like you have an edge because you've seen a matchup you like, you've seen some sort of strategy or situational factor, scheduling, whatever the case. You want to add them all up. And if the ledger says this side fits 3 out of the 4 things and this side fits 1 of the things, then you have an edge. So after process elimination, then you start looking at some of those other things. Well, what's going on here? Is it going to be too close to call? But I like the fact that you can eliminate 25% of the games right away and you don't have to go back to them.
And you touched on part of what I want to touch on is you've got to find other ways to attack this. And frankly, I think most people agree that the most efficient market to wager in is the NFL. So if you're going to sit there and try to beat the most difficult and efficient market, that's a tough hurdle to have. So as I said, I wasn't happy with my results. I was down almost 30 units this year. And I had enough because I found myself trying to, basically I found myself conforming to norms like, oh, well, you're supposed to bet against the spread. No, I'm supposed to make freaking money. And why am I putting my money in situations that are so many coin flips involved? And, thankfully, I basically said, I'm done with that. This is dumb. I feel like I'm a sucker. I really do.
Can you explain a little more, Cris? What do you mean by you're done with it? What do you mean by that?
Well, I'm going to explain that. I don't want to sit there and bet at +2 on this Super Bowl. Why should I? I can bet it in different ways. Every game of the year, why am I taking +1, +2? I want points. I want cushion. How can I give myself cushion? And there's different ways that I've done it. And, I went through like this transitional period last year where I kind of knew this and I was kind of half in, half out, and it didn't really work that well. And I had my first losing year in 7 years last season, and I was starting that way again this year. And I'm like, no, I know what needs to be done. This is idiotic. And I transitioned to using teasers and using parlays more often, essentially with everything. And, I got some pushback from clients. And as time went on, I've got clients that literally swear by it. They're never going to bet the same way that they used to again. I got one client who made like $65,000 in one weekend following, the way I'm doing it. And, I had pretty good success on it. And it sounds really silly. Everybody wants to sit there and parrot, oh, you're a sucker to be on parlays. You're a sucker to be on teasers. Everybody wants to parrot what media pundits tell you what you're supposed to do and what you're not supposed to do. The smartest guys in the industry on shows tell you can't tease through zero. You should only tease wongs. Parlays are for suckers. You know what? Okay. You believe what you want to believe. Okay. I know otherwise. And I've had great success with it over a large sample size. And it makes sense. And what you need to do is consider pivoting. If you're facing this severe difficulty in beating this randomness, find a different way to bet it. Why are you betting the same way everybody else is? As far as I'm concerned, there's a huge oyster out there to be harvested in alternate lines and in using teasers in different ways. And that's what I did. And obviously we don't have time, and this isn't the format to go into detail on it, but putting yourself, I come from a background of, having to take positions on games. When I first started betting, I did a lot of middling. I did a lot of scalping, arbitrage, that sort of stuff. And 10, 15 years ago, you had your ass on the line. You had to take positions. You had huge credit outs. You would be running around all the different casinos and you couldn't do everything as fast. So whatever you had to do, you had to be efficient on it. You had to know the value of everything. And that's the difference between the people coming to bet today. They don't have those same type of opportunities, like to learn how to read a market, understand where markets are going, what the values of different numbers are, chasing middles. Middles really aren't available anymore. Creating, putting yourself in positions where you are risking, where it's a combination of gambling, educated gambling, and added risk, but higher reward. So I don't know whether that's everybody can kind of understand what I'm saying with that, but I want to put myself in a position where I'm risking more. It's not, but the reward is going to be higher. But I also have insurance against, the bottom falling out in the wagers. There's times when I'm teasing both ends of games because I know that those games are going to be close. So there's a high probability of those games going to be close. I don't want to take +2. I want to take, for example, how I'm betting the Super Bowl this year. If you bet the NHL, if you bet the NBA or you bet other sports, you've got 2 weeks leading up to this game. If I like a hockey game under 5.5, well, then I might just go and I'll take a better line and I'll camouflage that in and take an under 6.5. And I might parlay that in with the Philadelphia +7.5. And what I'm doing is I'm mixing the sports up. If you have a bookmaker account is excellent. If you're betting college basketball or NBA, you can tease a basketball game into the Super Bowl. So if you're going to be betting a basketball game anyway, why not just use that as a front end teaser? And you get 5.5 points in a basketball game. If you're betting game anyway, it doesn't matter. You don't want to be teasing from shops that are only getting you 4.5. For -120, you get a 5.5 point teaser on a NCAA low total game. That has a fair amount of value. And now you've got your Philadelphia +7.5. or you can also use a variety combination of alternate lines. You can parlay straight lines of a basketball game into an alternate line. And this is coming from the perspective of risk. You know, if you want to manage what you're risking, you can monitor that easier because you've got your parlay amount. And I always try to create parlays that are plus money. I don't want to be laying points. So the alternate lines, there's great opportunities on them, and you have to really shop those because I took a list of all of those. I know I'm being a little long-winded, but I want to here's a little cheat sheet. If you like the plus money propositions, like your Kansas City plus money or your Philadelphia plus money, you don't go to DraftKings. Okay, you don't take plus points at the DraftKings on anything alternate lines. Okay, they all suck. But what does that mean? If you like laying points and you want the alternate lines, then DraftKings is the place to go. If you like the plus money, FanDuel has great prices, or the plus points. You have FanDuel that has great prices. Circa's got good prices, just to name a few. But there are great opportunities commingling the sports that are being played now into getting nice alternate lines for the Super Bowl and setting yourself up that way. Ultimately, I'm setting it up where I'm going to have plus 7.5 going both ways. And I'm going to lean it one way or another, obviously, on the team I like. But it really makes it a lot more interesting when you have those cushions. All these crazy endings and stuff. Myself and my clients, we're just laughing at it because we didn't care because we got both sides. You know, it didn't matter.
Yeah, I want to ask to simplify in one brief statement. Does that mean you are done with any short spreads for either side in the NFL, or you would rather take than give, or how does that come into play?
I don't want to monkey with the straight spreads when I'm able to. There's no quick tutoring on this, okay? It comes from years of betting, and I'm not even doing things optimally. I'm not even close to optimal, okay? And I'm having very good success with it. What's really good about it is that when you throw all these parlays and teasers, they think you're a sucker. You know, if you have accounts, they give you more points for parlays and teasers. They give you higher status with your casinos.
Memories.
They prolong your accounts. And little do they know, you know, I do just fine with all this crazy shit, you know, and it's fun. And in fact, I got clipped from a very notable sports book finally on teasers. They won't take my teasers anymore.
Wow.
And just another word, I would say at least 35% of my teasers go through zero. So anybody that sits there and says you can't tease through zero, you're a fucking moron. No, you're the moron. Do your own due diligence. Look it up. There are plenty of times you can tease through zero. That's all I have to say. Do your own work and stop parroting what you hear.
Okay, a quick thought on money lines. How does that come into play? Let's just say you like one side, but it's a short price. Would you just rather go with the money line and say, hey, just win, baby?
No, because in a game like this, you have this line, I think, I don't know, it has remote hope of flipping late. It has a possibility, but regardless, I'll find a way to tease both directions. When you're around pick or one, you can get the plus 7.5 both directions some way, somehow. You have to understand the values of each of the numbers. You know, I should actually express, if you like Kansas City, what you want to be doing is try to get yourself into some Kansas City plus 3.5. It's just so important. So many games are landing 3. You get the 1, the 2, and the 3. The true value at the current spread the very best number you're going to find is at Bookmaker and FanDuel right now. They're 215, 218. The true number is just slightly over minus 200. If you like them at 7.5, the true number is about 375. Bookmaker's got the best number for that at 398. And once again, show you what a ripoff DraftKings is. 398 at Bookmaker, 541 at DraftKings. If you want plus on the Kansas City, and then the numbers you want on Philadelphia plus 3.5. The true number is 167. You can find 175s out there, even at MGM. 174 FanDuel. Those are decent. Of course, DraftKings is the highest. 7.5. If you want to get that 7.5, you can actually find this true number. It's around 305. Circa has 310. Bookmaker 340. Caesars is 328. You've got DraftKings kicking up the rear at 400, completely on Pluto. But if you're working, if you know what these numbers are and what the values are, then you can, in an educated way, set up parlays that make functional sense.
Yeah, I guess I could say a lot about this. Maybe we'll visit it on Tuesday, because it was even before you had this topic I wanted to broach this subject. Do not do this just blindly. If you have a model, if you're using power ratings or whatever, Cris is going to suggest numbers that work for him, but that might not be numbers that work for me or work for any of our listeners and so on. If we have a different view of what our model says, then you have to adjust your own return on investment based on what you think is a fair price. So if you've got this game lined at Kansas City favored by 3, then you're going to be more interested in some of the other alternatives that give you the return on value. And you're just going to say, well, what are the odds that Kansas City wins by just 2 or 1? What are the odds that Kansas City doesn't win? That kind of thing. And they lose by 4 and so on. You just have to take each price, because if you're all of a sudden weighing 155 or 175 or 185, then you have to win over 60% of the time. And you have to remember that whenever you're teasing or parlaying it, it changes the variable. But if you're getting plus money on this, you don't have to win 60% of the time. You have to win a little bit less.
Yeah, I should have added an extremely important part. It doesn't apply to the Super Bowl, or it's harder to apply to the Super Bowl. Yeah, but you can do it. If you've got 2 events happening before, you can tease yourself into plus 7.5 plus money. Like for regular season, all my teasers and all my parlays are plus money. I'm not laying prices. I'm getting plus money on all of it. And that's another thing. And if you keep getting plus 160 or plus 200 or plus 130, then you can get creative about it, and you can play both sides, and it's not as costly as you think. And it gives you a huge window to kind of just sweep them both.
Ted knows this because we did it for years and years and years with the cross-sport props in the Super Bowl. We would take something, and then by the time the Super Bowl happens, you would say, wow, this guy was 5.5 catches to begin with. Now he only needs 2 catches for me. Or
yeah, exactly.
The Shaq prop or whatever, where, we needed, in order to win the bet, he had to have under 175 rushing yards or something like that. So if you find, and because operators don't know how to price, some of them are really good at this, and some of them do this once a year for cross-sport props and everything else. If you find deficiencies in the market and you're willing to possibly be limited, if you get too many of the wins and stuff like that, you can find stuff that sets you up in a very good position for the Super Bowl.
What do you think about this over 2.5 players throw a pass? That's a likely, isn't it?
It's getting priced too high. You could find plus, it used to be that over 2.5 players to catch a pass was something like 175.
Yeah, exactly.
175.
What is it now?
I've seen minus 275. I even saw minus 300.
That's
because
crazy.
I've seen general. There's a point. I mean, I can get plus 200, plus 225 on no right now. There's a point where if you think it's going to happen fewer than 1 out of every 3 games, fewer than 2 out of every 3 games, you're going to win. I mean, if you think it's a 50-50 type of prop, then you're going to take plus 200, plus 275. If you think it's going to happen 70% of the time, what's that, minus 233 or something like that? You're getting in a position where that prop is almost more valuable on the no.
Are there middle opportunities on that kind of a play, though?
Sure.
Where
on price, you get arbitrage.
Yeah, it's a topic that Cris kind of loosely brought up about 15 minutes ago. Bookmakers are not bookmakers anymore. They're financial planners or something like that. They're not creating their own lines,
right?
Copy and paste and stuff. So yeah, in the old days, you could middle any of these general props. I mean, if you lost money betting Super Bowl props, you were on a different planet. But that's not true anymore because everybody clones. There's the middling market, and the ARB market has almost completely disappeared.
Right.
And
but I'm wondering more on like this kind of a prop, though. Is there that much of a variance in the number, or is it?
Not on that one.
No. And any variance you see, like when Westgate comes out with the stuff like it did last night, and South Point or whatever, and William Hill, 24 to 48 hours later, they're all the same.
Okay, yeah.
To answer City's question, I actually would get diamond status in a day on Caesars properties just betting Super Bowl Sunday. That would be you'd have to do 100K, across the window on that, and used to look forward to that. Our routine was always just sit there, twiddle our thumbs, and our focus was always on the lay the price props, because the public is going to take the plus money. So there's this whole window of time that unless you find somebody making errors and stuff, you're not going to really find very much stuff, because everybody took the plus money value away, and now you need the public to sit there and shift the value the other way where you're laying prices. And a lot of people don't want to put out huge money for certain wagers. We would always be ready with fistful of money, and we'll lay those heavy prices. And that's how I first became involved in the alternate lines, because the alternate lines would be all over the place, because these books move on action. They don't watch the screen. There's nobody that's putting out what everybody's alternate line prices are. They're moving them around based on their action. So if you're just looking at every single shop and staying up on it, there'd be great opportunities. I swear to God, we would literally leave free money on the table because we had to pick which ones were the best. I mean, what was going to make us, because you can find minus 6.5 and plus 7.5, and you're getting paid to do it. I mean, you can literally buy into free middles where you're getting paid to have free numbers back in the day. I don't think you can really do that anymore, because too many of these places are robbing you too much. But it's not out of the question. There was a 2-cent scalp last night on alternates between two of the largest books. So it still happens.
Yeah, I mean, gone are the days where, because they're so computerized and they're so on top of things now, but the head-to-head props, you could literally have one side plus a half a catch and the other side plus a half a catch, and not even be laying juice, and sometimes even arbing that. I mean, there were, well, Ted knows the list of props that we had, but we would literally go through, and between the two of us, we'd have 10, 15 different middle opportunities. Surprisingly, not as many middles actually hit in the Super Bowl.
Exactly.
I mean, we had some stuff that in a regular season, we would hit half of those easy. There were such differences. But
for some reason, the Super Bowl is always different.
Yeah, we would hit 2 of them, and we'd have 15 live ones.
Oh, we
mean,
say
it's
we had a
still
lot
good,
of value.
We had a lot of value, but that's a story for another time.
Yeah.
You
By
know,
the way, yeah, go ahead.
It does seem like the Super Bowl can be more dangerous or lucrative based on wacky things. I've noticed in the years past that the people that are loading up on props, and they're not even correlated. I mean, back in the day, 15, 20 years ago, you could correlate everything, and things would be really interesting. But for some reason, people have some really horrendous years or some really, really good years. So don't load up on an absolute toilet roll and think, oh, well, I can't lose them all. Oh, yeah, you can.
I mean, it's a little harder to win at props these days, but in the Super Bowl, but it still should be doable. My worst props involve only one. The worst 3 Super Bowls I have involve one team participating in each of those 3. And so if the New York Giants ever go back to the Super Bowl, I'm going out of the country.
Sorry, what else did you have, Ted?
Yeah, I'm wondering, there's so many props these days about anything and everything, who's going to breathe the most in the second quarter. But I'm wondering, are there any props that you guys know of? Kansas City defense has allowed one 100-yard receiver all season. Is there going to be a prop that you could throw that in? Because why would it be any different in this game? Jerry Jeudy, the only guy, week 15, who had a 100-yard receiving game against that defense all year long. I think it's.
And am I wrong? Kansas City is not allowed a 90-yard rusher in the Super Bowl?
In the Super Bowl?
Yeah.
Well, that I don't.
So Saquon's over/under is higher than the amount of yards Kansas City's ever allowed, I believe.
Yeah, but I don't go back on past games when it has nothing to do with this team and how they're playing at this time. So I don't. But I'm just wondering: will there be, you think, a prop that fits into that stat, the 100-yard receiver?
You can bet, will any receiver, but this is both teams, will any receiver have over 100 yards, over 125, over 150?
Can you do it by the team, though?
They would have to come up with it, but I have not seen it by the team.
That's what I'm wondering. I haven't seen it either. Well, that's a number to remember if it pops up, is all I'm saying. And by the way, Spags, the only coordinator to win 4 Super Bowls, going for 5. That ain't too bad either.
No, it isn't.
Impressive stuff.
We'll save the rest for next week.
Yep.
Yeah, so we'll have some prop discussion next week, and I tried to explain a little bit about what I'm doing and stuff, and I've got to lost people. But the only thing that you can do, the way I learned how to read, markets, and last night I did exactly this, just by looking at the screen. I know how to read a market, and I picked out an NCAA basketball game, and I don't know anything about NCAA. Just by the line, I see that bookmaker is at a 5. I've got a 0.5 point bonus there on North Texas. I see it leaning down to 4, and you can tell it's going to go down to 4. So I immediately punched in a teaser with whoever North Texas was playing, and I took that up to 10.5. And I paired that with Philadelphia plus 7.5 for, laid the minus 120 in a teaser. And then I took the North Texas side on the money line, minus, I forget what it was. And I paired that with Philadelphia plus 7.5. And that was a plus money parlay. And they both win, and it's just.
So you're looking for as many quality open teasers as well, though? Because that's what I used to do a lot.
Yeah,
in advance. So then when you get to near game time, you can maneuver the hell out of it.
Well, I'm setting the teasers up at the same time because it doesn't really matter. I'm going to have so many last year in the Super Bowl, I had over 40 parlays and teasers into the Super Bowl. 40. So, and it worked out very well. And I'm not so sure it will this year. I'm starting to wonder how close this game might be. We'll talk about that more, but I will set it up because it should be close. I hope it's close because I'll have both sides.
Right. Yeah, close is
But
good. For
we'll
you know
be
what?
back
Yeah, I was going to say real quick, Chris, you made it easy for all of us now. Every time we see any spread under 2, we're not even paying attention anymore. We don't give a damn.
I'm not saying that.
I know. I'm just saying.
I lost my point is that
we know.
The only thing I can do is build awareness, and over time, awareness you learn. The only thing you can do to learn how to read a market is to stare at a line screen. The only way you can learn alternate lines is to interact with them. The only way you can learn how to use teasers effectively is, do your research on what actually does work and what doesn't, and play around with them a little bit. It's trial and error. That's all I can say. So if I lost people on what I'm doing, I expect to lose you, but at least there's some awareness where you kind of, it's on your radar.
Yep. We covered
Learn
a lot.
the basics first, get grounded, understand the ins and outs of straight betting, and then go from there to find variations that work for you. But don't skip the first step.
It's a building block. You got to know. You got to go up the ladder. You can't skip steps.
Yeah. Well, the good news is everybody's smarter now.
Are we doing Tuesday, Ron? Or are we just doing a Thursday? What are we going to do?
We should do Tuesday, even if it's short. We'll do a little Tuesday.
Okay, we'll be back on Tuesday with Ron and I, and so we can talk about Ted. And then Ted will
in front of my back.
We'll be back next week with some prop discussions and whatever else, and field any questions anybody has.
Sounds good. Nice job, boys.